Live on Live.
Our special guest on Paris Live today is a lawmaker from Cameroon, the Central African country facing a succession of crises. Government forces have been locked in a long desert war against Boko Haram Islamists in the north and also in a deadly conflict with English-speaking separatists in the northwest and southwest regions who are seeking independence from the francophone-majority country. Around one-fifth of Cameroon's population of 24 million are English speakers. The government of long-serving President Paul Biya has rejected the creation of the so-called Anglophone Republic of Ambazonia, with a brutal crackdown prompting separatists to mount a campaign of attacks on state buildings, shootings and kidnappings. Schools have remained closed in the English-speaking regions for the past 3 years, according to religious and rights organizations. The International Crisis Group think tank claims in a recent report that nearly 2,000 people have been killed, while more than 530,000 have been forced from their homes, and that's according to UN figures. Wilfred Fusi Namukong represents the opposition stronghold of Bamenda in Cameroon's National Assembly, where he serves as Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Commission. Honourable Fusi, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to begin with the scale of the humanitarian crisis in the two regions affected by the conflict, and it's worsening day by day. So what is your assessment of the current situation on the ground?
For the past 3 years, almost getting to 3 years, our country have been living in deep crisis. And this crisis have resulted to heavy humanitarian destruction. I want to let you know that our people have stayed out of their homes. Schools are not going. Our children are not going to school. Our health infrastructure is totally destroyed. In fact, most of the villages have been destroyed, burned down, and the government, with frivolous and pretentious attitude, does not want to resolve the problem. This has brought us into a crisis situation which is beyond human imagination at the 21st century. And we like an opposition party. In Parliament, we have done our best to debate this issue within the level of the National Assembly, and the powers that be have turned it down.
Now, you've been one of the most outspoken critics of Yaoundé's refusal to admit that there is an Anglophone problem in Cameroon. In fact, you took to the floor during question time on several occasions to call for debates by lawmakers in vain. What do you think is behind the reluctance to really acknowledge and address the crisis?
You know, the Cameroonian society, being what it is, came in from two indigenous setups. You have the Francophones, who have 8 regions, and the Anglophones, who have 2 regions. These were two people who came in together and had independence at different dates. But they came in with the belief that they were going to live on a federal structure. But with time, the powers that be decided to bring a unifying state, and finally, they decided to marginalize the Anglophones. So the people coming out to revolt are coming out with stomach pains that have been building over the years. And they are thinking that they have been marginalized. They want their voices to be heard. But the powers that be are using force to solve a political problem. And that is why you have seen violence against violence. And this have resulted to the separatists, the restoration forces, people agitating to stand for independence, coming out with protective means in order to salvage the situation.
The newly appointed Prime Minister Dion Ngute raised hopes when he announced that the government is now ready to put everything on the table during an open and direct dialogue involving all stakeholders. Is that what you understand as the government's current mindset?
Well, in his visit to the 2 regions, the affected regions of the northwest and southwest regions, We called on him. He made it possible and said the government was ready for dialogue. No dates have been put in place. We have all been waiting. When I went back to Parliament, like one of those who is highly affected, I decided to table a bill before Parliament so that we can resolve the crisis. In fact, I called for a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. I wanted immediate ceasefire from both the separatists and the military. I called for an open debate that will involve the parliamentarians looking at the root causes of the crisis so that we can come out with lasting solutions. I call on government to think that it is necessary to give amnesty to those who have been detained, be them in Yaoundé, in any part of the nation, so that they can come out and people feel free. When there's general amnesty, we can come out. I also call on government to envisage a way of compensating those who have been affected in one way or the other by evaluating what they have lost, the villages that have been burnt down, seeing what we can do to bring them out from the crisis by reconstruction and compensating them in one way or the other. I even called on government that through Parliament, let's make an open debate and set up committees for peace, truth, reconciliation, so that this can be able to talk about what is happening. But these have all been dropped, thwarted by the present regime. They are not willing. They are trying to use cosmetic solutions to a problem that they cannot solve with cosmetic solutions. And you know, violence against violence results to anarchy. What the people are passing through is anarchy. The economic aspects have been destroyed. The main development cooperation that is in the English-speaking side of the country called the CDC, Cameroon Development Corporation, have been grounded with over 20,000 people unemployed. The main refinery called Sonora was burnt down. And in fact, the whole thing is going down and nothing is being done to salvage the situation. We are living in crisis. And our surprise, we thought the international community would come in, but our surprise is that even France is silenced. They are not talking about the crisis. We are left within ourselves, and it is difficult to fight a regime that have been in power for over 37 years and planted its roots to all the directions with what we have. And so we are helpless and we go out crying and calling for dialogue that can sustain the situation. But for now, we don't see the headway.
I understand that Switzerland is acting as a facilitator or of another dialogue initiative and has actually held a number of preparatory meetings with some of the concerned parties. Is that something that you will support as well, or is that in contrast to what you're calling for a call to national debate? I
think dialogue from any direction will be welcome. What Switzerland is doing, we welcome it. Dialogue coming within and without, we welcome it. I cannot be a lawmaker, elected representative of the people, and I'll have joy watching the military being killed. I'll have joy watching the civilians being killed. I'll have joy having the innocent people being killed. I'll have joy seeing villages being destroyed. We want a way out of it so that our children can go back to school, so that the health infrastructure can come back to its normal circumstances. We are living in a mess, and we want any other, even Switzerland coming in, we welcome it. Any other negotiator, we thought that the AU can come in, even the United Nations should come in and say that these people are living in a crisis. In fact, we are open to any form of negotiations that will resolve the crisis.
Maybe we could just quickly touch on something here. Is that since the independence of Cameroon from France and with the creation of the two regions, the French-speaking region and the English-speaking region, has there always been a palpable tension between the two? Or is this the first time we're really entering such a concrete
You
crisis?
know, when the French had independence with the 8 regions, it took about 22 months for the English section to also have independence. And after the two had independence, they came out with a resolution that they were going to maintain a federal system of government, so that the English section will be managed and people will manage their states, and there will be the federal system of government will give a unifying system which give right to both the origins of the francophones, who are the French speakers, and the origin of the Anglophones, those who are the English speakers. But as I told you, since 1961, when this federal system came up, in 1972, they started changing everything. And from 1972 to 1984, getting up to the present situation, it have deteriorated, and the Anglophones are finding it difficult to belong to where they are belonging. That is why you see most of them thinking that we should form a separate state, so that their ideologies, their way of leadership as Anglophones should be managed by themselves with a separate state. That is what they are thinking. And since the government is not opening any form of dialogue that can resolve the problem, it forces the people to be pushed to the wall, and they start fighting back. And that is what is happening in the Anglophone area.
Now, just touching on a recent development, is that when you arrived here in Paris, it was just as news was breaking out about the release of Cameroon's main opposition party leader, Namukong, following his abduction for the second time in 2 months. Do we know how he's doing, and has there been any reason given for his abduction?
It's very, very terrible that a leader of that magnitude can be adopted, kidnapped, and kept in such circumstances. I am very happy that he was released, and I am following the conversations we had over the days. He is doing well, although still on treatment, and we just pray that the entire nation should see us lawmakers like those who can be able to talk out and see about a solution. In fact, Namukong is one of those founders who have stood strong to make sure democracy is practiced in Cameroon, and he should not be taken for granted.
Okay, I guess we'll leave it right there. Cameroon Member of Parliament Wilfred Fusi Namukong, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today here in our studio.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.